Hello and welcome to TVB News. I'm Melissa Hekalea. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced heavy tariffs on most countries in the world. He hiked tariffs on China by an extra 34 percentage points in addition to existing 20% levies by announcing a raft of so-called reciprocal tariffs on trading partners. The new tariff rates also apply to Hong Kong, despite Hong Kong being an independent trading entity under the World Trade Organization. A separate 25% tariff on cars and auto parts imported into the U.S. is also due to come into effect on Thursday. Danny Zhou reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump announced a new wave of so-called reciprocal tariffs in what he called the Liberation Day package during a White House Rose Garden event on Wednesday. Standing with a giant chart outlining the tariffs, he declared a 10% minimum baseline tariff across the board, plus steeper rates on certain trading partners including China, the European Union, Japan, India, and South Korea.
China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So it's 67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them.
Since returning to the White House in January, Donald Trump has already levied 2 tranches of 10% additional duties on Chinese goods. This latest announcement is bringing the U.S.'s effective total rate on China to 54%, close to his campaign pledge of 60%. Tariffs on Southeast Asian countries are among the highest, with Vietnam's tariff at 46%. Tariffs on the European Union are 20% and the UK 10%. Washington's close Asian partners Japan and South Korea at 24% and 25% respectively. However, there was no mention of the US's 2 largest trading partners, Canada and Mexico. Trump said for decades the US has been looted, pillaged, raped and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike.
None of our companies are allowed to go into other countries. And I say that, friend and foe, and in many cases, the friend is worse than the foe in terms of trade.
Trump's reciprocal tariff formula fired at existing trade balances.
In short, chronic trade deficits are no longer merely an economic problem. They're a national emergency that threatens our security and our very way of life. It's a very great threat to our country.
He said the tariffs will be used to boost U.S. manufacturing.
And today we're standing up for the American worker, and we are finally putting America first.
The new duties, which immediately come into effect following Trump's announcement, will undo trade arrangements that have been in place since 1947. The White House noted some goods will not be subject to the reciprocal tariff. These include steel and aluminium, cars and auto parts already subject to Section 232 tariffs, as well as copper, pharmaceuticals and lumber. Trump also signed an executive order effective on May the 2nd to close a de minimis trade exemption. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
Asian markets and U.S. futures tumbled after U.S. President Donald Trump announced big increases in tariffs on imports of goods from around the world. Daniel Rao tells us more.
Shares plunged in Europe and Asia in the wake of the latest tariff increases by U.S. President Donald Trump. The double-digit tariff hike sent shivers across world markets as economists warn it raises the risk of recession. In Asian trading, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index lost 1.7%. The Shanghai Composite Index edged 0.2% lower. Tokyo's Nikkei 225 Index dipped 4% briefly, with automakers and banks taking big hits. It closed down 2.8%. Mitsubishi UFJ Financial Group's shares plunged 7.2% as the potential impact of the 24% tariffs on the export-dependent Japanese economy dashed expectations the Bank of Japan will keep raising interest rates. Sonicor's stock sank 4.8% and Toyota Motor Corp gave up 5.2%. In South Korea, which was hit with a 25% tariff, the benchmark Kospi fell 1.1%.
we saw a sell-off this morning. I believe Asian investors will remain jittery. They will wait to see the impact of the U.S. tariff on the economic growth, and also on the other hand, what kind of retaliatory measures the government are going to take against U.S. Tariffs. I will say it's a big uncertainty for Asian markets because many Asian countries, they are very export-oriented. And this time around, you can see that even Vietnam and Cambodia are also subject to massive tariffs by the US. So it will deal a blow to the export sector in many Asian countries.
Daniel, TV News.
The European Union and many countries have strongly criticized Trump's move. Every nation is being forced to reimagine their economic relationship with the world's largest economy. Some countries say they'll reciprocate by increasing duties on American goods. A few governments plan to renegotiate with Washington, while others are taking a wait-and-see approach. David Garrett with the global reaction.
The tariff list will hit almost all corners of the globe. Donald Trump's announcement sending world leaders into a spin.
Is a major blow to the world economy. I deeply regret this choice. Let's be clear-eyed about the immense consequences. The global economy will massively suffer. Uncertainty will spiral and trigger the rise of further protectionism. The consequences will be dire for millions of people around the globe, also for the most vulnerable countries, which are now subject to some of the highest US tariffs. The opposite of what we wanted to achieve. The tariffs will also hurt consumers around the world. It will be felt immediately.
The EU trading bloc facing 20% tariffs. That includes its largest economy, Germany. The outgoing Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, condemned Trump's announcement as fundamentally wrong. Scholz said the global economy will suffer from ill-considered decisions. The US government is taking the path of losers, he says, although, Scholz added, Germany is available for talks. With Japan's automotive industry already facing across-the-board 25% import taxes, all exports to the US from the world's fourth largest economy will now face a 24% increase in levies. The Cabinet Secretary called it extremely regrettable. Tokyo wants a review and question whether Trump's actions are compatible with previous Japan-US agreements. Australia, one of America's staunchest allies and strongest supporters, smacked with the baseline 10%. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese astonished.
A reciprocal tariff would be 0, not 10%. The administration's tariffs have no basis in logic, and they go against the basis of our two nations partnership. This is not the act of a friend. It is the American people who will pay the biggest price for these unjustified tariffs. This is why our government will not be seeking to impose reciprocal tariffs.
South Korean acting President Hung Duk-soo says Seoul will use all available measures to tackle tariffs, saying a global trade war is now a reality. Some countries say they will try to negotiate with Trump immediately, others waiting to see what happens before making a move.
Last night, the President of the United States acted for his country, and that is his mandate. Today, I will act in Britain's interests with mine. We are prepared. Indeed, one of the great strengths of this nation is our ability to keep a cool head.
The French government say they will remonstrate with Trump, with a spokesman adding the US president is behaving as if he is master of the world. David Garrett, TVB News.
Beijing has vowed to retaliate to Trump's bullying tariffs, urging Washington to immediately cancel the measures. A spokesman for the foreign ministry warned China would take necessary actions to defend its legitimate rights. He said the U.S. tariffs breach WTO rules, endanger the common interests of people of all countries, and do not help solve the problems of the U.S. itself. He urged the U.S. side to properly resolve differences with all trading partners, including China, through dialogue. China already took countermeasures to earlier rounds of tariffs with higher duties on U.S. exports of farm products and export limitations for minerals used for high-tech industries such as electric vehicles. After U.S. President Donald Trump unleashed the new tariff rates, a local printing businessman said the industry should explore markets outside the U.S. and Southeast Asia. Mimo Singhai reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump's latest round of tariffs target almost all of Washington's trading partners. Apart from a baseline tariff of 10% on all countries, a set of reciprocal levies will be applied to about 60 nations. Cambodia received the toughest import tariffs, 49%. Laos, Vietnam, and Myanmar have all been hit by a levy of more than 40%. Bangladesh and Thailand also feature in the list. Alan See, a local printing businessman, says some Hong Kong manufacturers have relocated their production lines to Southeast Asian countries. But he would not consider that an option, especially after the announcement of the new tariffs.
Our product is not the kind of high-end, and the profit is very, very tight and marginal. So I think even a move in the Asian country, I don't think it's compatible. My decision is not going to any other country, and rather than stay in China, or we talk to our client overseas to increase the prices. Otherwise, we cannot survive.
See, other manufacturers who wish to expand their business should explore markets other than North America and Southeast Asia. Meanwhile, lawmaker Jeffrey Lam said the business sector should wait and observe how markets react.
For example, Vietnam, the import duty to the U.S. will be 46%. There is only a small difference between Hong Kong, China, and Vietnam. So how would the U.S. importer react to that?
Lam says exporters and manufacturers should stand together against the tariff pressures imposed by the U.S. In response to the new tariffs on Hong Kong products, the SAR government said the measures are unreasonable and violate the rules of the World Trade Organization. The government has urged the U.S. to remove the measures. Ms. 9, TVB News.
Donald Trump signed an executive order to stop the duty-free entry of low-value items worth under $800 US into the U.S. from Hong Kong. The SAR government expressed strong opposition and dissatisfaction to the move. The government said the Hong Kong post office would still accept U.S.-bound parcels, but will not collect the tax on behalf of the U.S. Samantha Lee reports.
In February, the U.S. announced the suspension of parcels from Hong Kong to the U.S., but the suspension was later lifted. Just 8 weeks later, Washington is ending the duty-free entry of low-value packages. In Hong Kong's General Post Office in Central, no notice on the new arrangement was posted on Thursday morning.
Because I think it's wrong. What happened there is wrong, and I think Trump don't control himself. He have a wrong advisor, because they don't know what they're doing. It's wrong. I think he wants some attention for something. He think he can buy the votes from American people, but I think he hurt them this way.
According to the new U.S. policy, imported items from mainland China and Hong Kong are no longer duty-free starting from May 2nd. Parcels worth less than $800 US will be subject to a duty rate of either 30% of their value or $25 US per item. The rate will increase to $50 US per item after June 1st. Logistic group DHL said they were still accepting US-bound parcels and will provide customers with assistance to cope with future policy changes. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
Willie Lin, chairman of the Hong Kong Shippers Council, says the Chinese government may roll out countermeasures, while some small countries may consider lifting tariffs on U.S. goods.
Of course, it is not a good sign. It is that definitely we expect. Beijing government, central government, is basically stated very clear. They will target to fight back, to hit back on the U.S. export. So we don't expect that will be an overnight. Everything will be settled. Definitely, there will be a lot more juggling every country will now have to go to talk to the US and see how they will react to it. But one we can look at is most of the ASEAN small countries, they have no choice but to find a way to open up their market, or to take away all duties for the US product, so to enable the US will not target them.
Still ahead, residents urged to be cautious to prevent hill fires during Qingming Festival tomorrow. 7 vehicles crash into one another on Lung Chung Road this morning. And Hong Kong sends 20 tons of aid to help with Myanmar's earthquake relief efforts. Welcome back. The Fire Services Department reminds the public to be cautious to prevent hill fires during Qingming Festival tomorrow. In a press conference today, the Fire Services Department, Civil Aid Service, and the Government Flying Service announced their anti-hill fire measures. One of them is to conduct more frequent patrols at 8 high-risk spots, including Chi Ma Leng in Yuen Long and Kai Shan in Tin Shui Wai. Meanwhile, the Customs and Excise Department reminds the public and travelers not to bring space oil in or out of the city over the Qingming weekend. Under the Dangerous Drugs Ordinance, the maximum penalty for possession of space oil is 7 years imprisonment and a fine of $1 million. The highest penalty for drug trafficking is life imprisonment and a fine of $5 million. 2 traffic accidents happened along Lung Chung Road this morning. One of the collisions involved 7 vehicles that left 6 people injured. 7 private vehicles were driving along Lung Chung Road toward Kwun Tong when they crashed near Lung Chung Road Park. 2 of the most seriously damaged vehicles were electric cars and were stacked on one another. Firefighters and paramedics were called to the scene. Victims were sent to Queen Elizabeth Hospital. The fast lane was closed. Drivers could only use the remaining lanes. There were long lines lasting 3 hours on the Kwun Tong-bound lanes of Lung Chung Road. The death toll from the earthquake that hit Myanmar last week has moved past 3,000. Rescue teams were able to extricate people from collapsed buildings late on Wednesday, more than 5 days after the quake. David Garrett reports.
Rescuers were able to pull 2 survivors alive from a hotel in Myanmar's capital. People weeping with relief in the street as the team cut the pair free. A third person was saved from a crumbling guest house in another city. A miracle in Mandalay as Chinese rescuers carried a man out of another hotel on a stretcher. After more than 125 hours barely able to move, the man is in a stable condition and China's relief efforts continue. A second batch of supplies is on its way from Beijing. Hundreds of tents, thousands of blankets and more. China's International Development Cooperation Agency has pledged to treat the injured and help rebuild its stricken neighbour. And as Chinese relief teams reach Saigang, the epicenter of the 7.7 quake, it's clear there is much to do. Buildings teeter on the brink of collapse. Other constructions have already succumbed. But rescue operations continue. Sany, a Chinese heavy machinery manufacturer, sending personnel and equipment to help.
After the earthquake, we prioritized the safety of our employees and swiftly organized rescue efforts. Within an hour, we established a Sany rescue team consisting of over 30 members, coordinating the deployment of essential equipment such as excavators. Approximately 10 team members rushed to the affected area in Mandalay.
Shugong Engineering, BYD and the Bank of China are also contributing in conjunction with international aid groups. Survivors, some of whom are living in tents on the streets, queue for handouts. Much of Myanmar is without power, water supplies are low. Hundreds are in need.
For the initial phase, of course, it was search and rescue. Now we've shifted to those who have survived and providing food. And with partners, there will also be shelter, health, and water and sanitation.
The World Health Organization flags a rising risk of cholera in the worst affected areas as it prepares a $1 million supply package, which includes body bags. David Garrett, TVB News.
The Hong Kong government has donated 20 tons of relief supplies to Myanmar, including food, drinking water, and medical kits. The Consul General of Myanmar, Han Wing Naing, attended the donation ceremony at Hong Kong International Airport. Relief supplies were collected in accordance with the specific needs of the disaster-stricken area. Part of these supplies were donated by the local community. The Chief Secretary for Administration, Eric Chan, said the disaster relief fund mechanism had been activated. 7 organizations such as Red Cross and Oxfam were granted $30 million in total to implement disaster relief projects. According to a U.S. official, Amazon has put in a bid to purchase TikTok. TikTok faces a Friday deadline to reach a deal to find a non-Chinese buyer under threat of being banned in the United States. Washington having raised security concerns because of the app's ties to China. The official, speaking on condition of anonymity, said the Amazon offer was made in a letter to Vice President J.D. Vance and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.